Yesterday, the Ukrainians launched yet another terrorist attack against Russia, this time a threefold attack on the Kerch Bridge, the beautiful new bridge in Crimea. And the SBU, of course, was very quick to take credit, claiming that they had done a unique and special operation using an underwater drone to strike the base of the bridge, and they claimed that they did intense structural damage. However, observers, people looking at the traffic over the bridge, said that the bridge was temporarily closed twice, reopened, no traffic jams, no lines. But again, this is done for cosmetic purposes to fuel the line that if Ukraine would just be armed more, they could beat Russia. Ukraine can beat Russia. Russia has been weakened. We're hearing this in the aftermath of the attacks on the 5 military air bases, 3 of which were fully repelled, 2 of which did damage and destroy a handful of planes, maybe 4 or 5, not the 41 or several dozen that the Ukrainians claimed. And again, this is being called in the West the Pearl Harbor, a brilliant operation, secret, brilliant, etc. Putin and the fanatical bloggers are even saying Putin can now be assassinated. Obviously, this is extremely dangerous, and it has more to do with the bankrupt financial system and the need to keep propping up the bubble by producing weapons or sloshing money around for overpriced weapons to inflate this. Now, I think a very great significance is the statement by Medvedev, who was the former president of Russia, who is now the vice director or deputy chair of the National Security Council. People know him for being sort of a hothead. This statement, though, of yesterday is very measured. And he does it, of course, because many people in the Russian Federation are getting quite frustrated and angry and thinking Putin should respond much more harshly. What is going to be the action against Ukraine? And under these circumstances, Medvedev writes the following: "To everyone who is worried and waiting for retribution, it's right to worry. That's what normal people do. Retribution is inevitable. But keep in mind, 1, our army is moving forward and will continue to advance. Everything that needs to be blown up will be blown up, and those who must be eliminated will be. 2, the Istanbul talks are not for striking a compromise peace on someone else's delusional terms, but for ensuring our swift victory and the complete destruction of the neo-Nazi regime." That's what the Russian memorandum published yesterday is about. And by the way, that memorandum includes such things that the 4 oblasts formerly of Ukraine, Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia, will be recognized as part of the Russian Federation, and Crimea, of course. It includes the denazification of Ukraine, that Ukraine must never join NATO, must never have nuclear weapons, and must allow the full rights of the Russian-speaking population. That's what's in the Russian memorandum. Now, a writer actually pointed out that he thinks the tone of this being very stoic and calm is far more ominous than some of Medvedev's hot-headed statements. And he says, he speculates that the Orezhnik missiles will soon be flying. I don't know, but I'm certain that a retaliation is planned in some form. Also, remember, June 12th is Russia National Day. Now, unfortunately, Annalena Baerbock has become the new president of the UN General Assembly. This position, frankly, doesn't seem to have that much power because of the UN Security Council, the US and UK being able to veto everything that's relevant. But nonetheless, at least Guterres did speak out against the genocide in Gaza. Annalena Baerbock will not do that. She is a hardcore supporter of these Zionist atrocities being committed by Israel, and she is a hardcore supporter of Ukraine. So this is quite bad. 167 nations voted for her. I looked at the YouTube video of her speech, and every single comment was negative. So I have to say, it reminded me a bit of the US and EU elections, where people who are vile and hated by the people they're supposed to represent somehow get elected into positions of power. I don't really understand this. Now, I should have mentioned that genius, that pillar of moral fortitude, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, in response to Medvedev's very serious statements, wrote, quote, "Congratulations to Mr. Medvedev for a rare moment of honesty coming from the Russian propaganda machine. I appreciate you making it clear to the world that Putin and Russia are not remotely interested in peace," unquote. That is not what Medvedev was saying. He doesn't want a compromise with a pro-Nazi regime. But Lindsey Graham never met a Ukrainian or a Russian that he wasn't happy to see dead, nor a Palestinian. And many of you may be familiar with the now roasting of Lindsey Graham by tens of thousands of bloggers and journalists for his absolutely outrageous comment on a picture from the Times of Israel, which showed the Freedom Flotilla. This is a boat heading toward Gaza from Europe, which is carrying food and humanitarian aid. And the environmental activist Greta Thunberg has joined this. Lindsey Graham posts as he retweets this article, "Hope Greta and friends can swim," basically calling on Israel to bomb the vessel as they have done in the past. That's a death threat. That's a threat of violence against these people. But why should we care? After all, former FBI Director James Comey is still running around loose. He has not been jailed, as Tulsi Gabbard recommended would be appropriate. And I will say, on this question of Russia and Ukraine, the fact that we still have not heard from President Trump. We heard today, or yesterday, I should say, from Caroline Leavitt, the White House spokesperson, that Trump supposedly was not informed by Ukraine about their plans to launch these attacks. That in and of itself is obviously very problematic, because if we are supposedly allies of Ukraine or working with Ukraine to end the war, and they're not telling us what they're doing, and they're bombing, droning military air bases which carry planes capable of dropping nuclear bombs, which therefore also likely have nuclear weapons, nuclear fuel. This is very dangerous. And it means that, frankly, we owe Ukraine nothing if they would sabotage the negotiations in this way. If the CIA and MI6 were involved, particularly the CIA, and they didn't inform Trump, that's another major problem. Heads should roll, people should be fired. If President Trump actually knew about this and allowed it to go ahead, obviously that is a very big problem. And if he felt that he knew about it but he couldn't stop it, what it means is he's not really in control of his presidency. And I think it means that we have to escalate on demanding a release of the files on the Kennedy assassination, 9/11, Russiagate, and Tulsi Gabbard needs to get full backup to clean house, as she should be doing. Now, just a bit of clarification for some of you who hear about the Russians having kidnapped Ukrainian children. This is not true. And the Russian negotiator made the following point when he said that we're being accused of this, the return of 339 children supposedly kidnapped. He said, we are talking about dozens of children, none of whom was abducted, not a single one. These are children rescued by our soldiers in a war zone, often at risk of our soldiers' own lives. And we are looking for their parents. When their parents are found, we return them. We have already returned over 100 of these children. Kiev, on the other hand, has only returned 22 children to Russia. So stop spreading the lies. Finally, on Gaza, we had the third day yesterday of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation or Humanitarian Fund, a complete disaster, a sham, a fraud. 27 people were shot by the Israelis yesterday morning, mostly in the head and chest. You have a population of hundreds of thousands or 1.8 million people overall who are starving, in desperate need of food, and you are handing out food for only 890,000 of those people, for half of the people to have one meal per day. So you can imagine the desperation of people. Why would they stand in orderly lines? Very few people even have the strength to carry the 40-pound boxes. The Israelis claim that things were getting unruly, so they shot into the air. They fired warning shots, which somehow struck 184 people and killed at least 27 of them. It's a complete fraud and an outrage. So I think what you can see is that from the press coverage of the recent Ukrainian attacks on Russia, they flipped the script. Russia is weakened now. They are desperate to change the narrative to cover up the fact that every sane person knows Ukraine will not win the war. They've already lost over 1 million people. Russia will win on the battlefield, as Russia knows, which is why they are not going to be goaded into extreme, reckless responses to the acts of terrorism being carried out. The question really is, what side is the United States on? It is urgent that President Trump take a strong stand in this matter against the terrorism. It is urgent that you, the American people, blast these disgusting members of Congress, the 82 members of the U.S. Senate who are joining with Senators Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal and their crazy tariffs against any nation which trades energy, whether it's uranium, oil, gas, etc., with Russia, simply designed to target the BRICS, and it won't work. I don't see that people are even going to go along with it. So unless we act to stop this, we are just looking like a complete outlaw state that has become the image of what we had a revolution against 250 years ago, namely the British Empire. What is needed is to implement Lyndon LaRouche's 4 laws, starting with the bankrupting of Wall Street through the reinstatement of the old FDR-era Glass-Steagall Act, and then directing credit to build major modern infrastructure and work with the BRICS. Russia and China are not our enemies. Global